Chapter 1, Marseille Arrival. On February 24, 1815, the lookout at Notre-Dame de la Garde signalled the arrival of 3 master pharaons, coming from Smyrna, Trieste, and Naples. As usual, a coastal pilot immediately left the port, sailed hard by the Chateau d'If, and boarded the ship between the Cap du Morgio and the island of Rio. At once, as was also customary, the terrace of Fort Saint Jean was thronged with onlookers, because the arrival of a ship is always a great event in Marseille, particularly when the vessel, like the Pharaon, has been built, fitted out, and laded in the shipyards of the old port and belongs to an owner from the town. I think it's going to be easier if I just do the single ticket rolls first. I'm sorry if my reading voice is a little bit hoarse. It's been a while since I've read something like out loud consistently. I am going to be doing slow rolls for this. Okay, we've got the say CE, right then. Meanwhile, the ship was drawing near, and had successfully negotiated the narrows created by some volcanic upheaval between the islands of Calsray and Jarre. It had rounded Pommegue and was proceeding under its 3 topsails, its outer jib and its spanker, but so slowly and with such melancholy progress that the bystanders, instinctively sensing some misfortune, wondered what accident could have occurred on board. Nevertheless, those who were experts in nautical matters acknowledged that, if there had been such an accident, it could not have affected the vessel itself, for its progress gave every indication of a ship under perfect control. The anchor was ready to drop, and the bowsprit shrouds loosed. Next to the pilot, who was preparing to guide the Pharaon through the narrow entrance to the port of Marseille, stood a young man, alert and sharp-eyed, supervising every movement of the ship and repeating each of the pilot's commands. One of the spectators on the terrace of Fort Saint Jean had been particularly affected by the vague sense of unease that hovered among them, so much that he could not wait for the vessel to come to land. He leapt into a small boat and ordered it to be rowed out to the Pharaon, coming alongside opposite the cove of La Réserve. When he saw the man approaching, the young sailor left his place beside the pilot, and hat in hand came and leant on the bulwarks of the ship. He was a young man of between 18 and 20, tall, slim, with fine dark eyes and ebony black hair. His whole demeanour possessed the calm and resolve peculiar to men who have been accustomed from childhood to wrestle with danger. Nothing new. Ah, it's you, Dantés, the man in the boat cried. What has happened, and why is there this air of dejection about all on board? A great misfortune, Monsieur Morel, the young man replied. A great misfortune, especially for me. While off Civitavecchia, we lost our good Captain Leclerc. Got bright lights on this. It's quite small text. Okay. And the cargo? The ship owner asked brusquely. It has come safe to port, Monsieur Morel, and I think you will be content on that score. But poor Captain Leclerc, What happened to him then? The ship owner asked, visibly relieved. So what happened to the good captain? He is dead. Lost overboard? No, monsieur. He died of an apoplectic fever in terrible agony. Then, turning back to his crew, he said, "Look lively there, every man to his station to drop anchor." The crew obeyed. As one man, the 8 or 10 sailors of which it was composed leapt, some to the sheets, others to the braces, others to the halyards and others to the jib, and still others to the brails. The young sailor glanced casually at the start of this operation and, seeing that his orders were being carried out, prepared to resume the conversation. But how did this misfortune occur? The ship owner continued, picking up where the young man had left off. By heaven, monsieur, in the most unexpected way imaginable. After a long conversation with the commander of the port, Captain Leclerc left Naples in a state of great agitation. 24 hours later, he was seized with fever, and 3 days after that, he was dead. We gave him the customary funeral, and he now rests, decently wrapped in a hammock with a 36-pound cannonball at his feet and another at his head, off the island of Giglio. Still nothing new. I've got the phone right in front of the book. We've brought his medal and his sword back for his widow. Much good it did him, the young man continued, with a melancholy smile, to fight the war against the English for 10 years, only to die at last, like anyone else, in his bed. Damn it, Monsieur Edmond. What do you expect? Said the ship owner, who appeared to be finding more and more to console him in his grief. We're all mortal. The old must give way to the young, or else there would be no progress or promotion. As long as you can assure me that the cargo... All is well with it, Monsieur Morel. I guarantee you. If you take my advice, you will not discount this trip for a profit of 25,000 francs. Then, as they had just sailed past the round tower, the young sailor cried, "Furl the topmast sails, the jib and the spanker. Look lively." The order was obeyed with almost as much dispatch as on a man-o'-war. I know nothing about boats. Let's go and brail all. At this last command, all the sails were lowered, and the progress of the ship became almost imperceptible, driven only by the impetus of its forward motion. "And now, if you would like to come aboard, Monsieur Morel," Dantés said, observing the owner's impatience. "I see your supercargo, Monsieur Danglars." Oh, sorry, got another copy of that CD. That's one that I like to use on my support casters. Monsieur Danglars, coming out of his cabin. "He will give you all the information that you desire. As for me, I must see to the mooring and put the ship in mourning." The owner did not need asking twice. He grasped hold of a line that Dantés threw to him, and with an agility that would have done credit to a seaman, climbed the rungs nailed to the bulging side of the ship. While Dantés went back to his post and left the conversation to the man he had introduced as Danglars, the latter was indeed emerging from his cabin and coming across to the ship owner. His new arrival was a man, 25 to 26 years old, somewhat sombre in appearance, obsequious towards his superiors and insolent to his subordinates. Hence, even apart from the label of supercargo, which always in itself causes aversion among sailors, he was generally as much disliked by the crew as Dantés was loved by them. "Well, Monch, hello, bandit!" That was either the best timing or the worst timing ever. The first one to hear Holly say is seaman. Yeah, I am reading the Count of Monte Cristo while I try and roll for the main protagonist of the Count of Monte Cristo. Lots of talk about boats at the moment. I apologise for all of the French words you're going to hear me say wrong. Okay. Well, Monsieur Morel, said Danglars, you have heard the bad news, I suppose? Yes, yes, poor Captain Leclerc. He was a fine and upright man. And above all, an excellent sailor, weathered between the sea and the heavens, as was proper in a man responsible for looking after the interests of so important a firm as Morel and Son, Danglars replied. Even so, the ship owner replied. What? Which works out well. I've just spent the last hour and a half playing the new update on Sea of Thieves. You can now buy and name ships. The HMS Shadowlands was launched today. Nice! Okay. Even so, the ship owner replied, watching Dantés while he searched for his mooring. Even so, I think one not need be a seaman of such long experience as you say, Danglars, to know the business. There is our friend Edmond going about his, it seems to me, like a man who has no need to ask advice of anybody. Was it a disappointment like the WoW expansion? Jim has been telling me all about World of Warcraft recently. Okay. Indeed, said Danglars, casting a sidelong glance at Dantés with a flash of hatred in his eyes. Yes, indeed, he is young and full of self-confidence. The captain was hardly dead before he had taken command without asking anyone, and made us lose a day and a half on the island of Elba. But I'm still stopping to sort of look at chat between reading. Instead of returning directly to Marseille. As far as taking command of the ship is concerned, said the owner, that was his duty as first mate. As for losing a day and a half at Elba, he was in the wrong, unless there was some damage to the ship that needed repairing. The ship was in as good shape as I am, and as good as I hope you are, Monsieur Morel. That day and a half was lost on a whim, for nothing other than the pleasure of going ashore. Dantés, the owner said, turning towards the young man. Would you come here? Your pardon, monsieur, Dantés said. I shall be with you in an instant. Then to the crew he called, drop anchor! The anchor was immediately lowered and the chain ran out noisily. Dantés stayed at his post, even though the pilot was there. Until the last operation... Okay. The anchor was immediately lowered and the chain ran out noisily. Dantés stayed at his post, even though the pilot was there. Until the last operation had been carried out, then ordered, lower the pennant and the flag to half-mast. Brace the yards. You see, Danglars said, I do believe he thinks himself captain. Already. So he is, in effect, said the owner. Yes, apart from your signature and that of your partner, Monsieur Morel. By gad, why shouldn't we leave him in the job? Said the owner. He is young, I grant you, but he seems made for it and very experienced in his work. The cloud passed across Danglars' brow. Is that new? Oh, that is a new craft essence. I haven't got that one. I thought it looked familiar. Excuse me, Monsieur Morel, Dantés said as he came over. Now the ship is moored. I am entirely at your disposal. I think you called me? Danglars took a step back. I wanted to ask why you stopped on the island of Elba. I don't know, Monsieur. It was to carry out a last order from Captain Leclerc, who gave me, on his deathbed, a packet for Marshal Bertrand. Did you see him, Edmond? Whom? The Grand Marshal. Yes. Morel looked about him and drew Dantés aside. And how is the Emperor? He asked earnestly. He is well, as far as I can judge by my own eyes. So you saw the Emperor too, did you? He came to visit the Marshal while I was there. And did you speak to him? It was he, Monsieur, who spoke to me, Dantés said, smiling. And what did he say? He asked me about the ship, time of its departure for Marseille, the route it had taken and the cargo we were carrying. I'm just gonna... I do plan on re-rolling, like, all of this. Nothing new so far, but also no Kyo, which is good. He asked me about the ship, the time of its departure for Marseille, the route it had taken and the cargo we were carrying. I think that had it been empty, and I the master of it, he intended to buy it. But I told him that I was only the first mate, and that the ship belonged to the firm of Morel and Son. Ah yes, he said. I know them. The Morels have been ship owners from father to son, and there was Morel who served in the same regiment as I did, when I was garrisoned at Valence. By heaven, that's a fact, the ship owner cried with delight. It was Policar Morel, my uncle, who later made captain. Dantés, tell my uncle that the Emperor remembered him, and you will bring tears to the old trooper's eyes. Come, come now, he went on, putting a friendly arm across the young man's shoulders. You did well to follow Captain Leclerc's instructions and stop in Elba, even though, if it were known that you gave a packet to the Marshal and spoke to the Emperor, you might be compromised. How could it compromise me, Monsieur? Said Dantés. I don't even know what I was carrying, and the Emperor only asked me the same question that he would have put to anyone else. But please excuse me, he continued. The health authorities and the customs are coming on board, with your permission? Of course, my dear Dantés, carry on. The young man went off, and as he did so, Danglars returned. So, he asked, it appears that he gave you good reason for stopping off at Porto Ferrajo. Sorry, I am occasionally stopping because I also have wine, as I mentioned at the start of the stream. What do people think about me reading, by the way? This is something that I might look at doing, like, more of on stream at some point. I haven't read this before, which is why I'm being a little bit slow. Yay. Excellent reason, my dear Danglars. I am pleased to hear it, the other replied. It's always distressing to see a comrade fail in his duty. Dantés did his duty, the shipowner answered, and there is no more to be said. It was Captain Leclerc who ordered him to put into port. Speaking of Captain Leclerc, did he not give you a letter from him? Who? Dantés. Not to me. Was there one? I believe that, apart from the packet, Captain Leclerc entrusted him with a letter. You enjoy sitting here, it's fun listening to me work through serious novels. Yeah, I like serious novels. I went to uni and I studied serious novels. I just haven't read this one. Which packet are you referring to, Danglars? The same that Dantes delivered when we stopped at Porto Ferrajo. And how did you know that he had a packet to deliver at Porto Ferrajo? Danglars blushed. I was passing by the door of the captain's cabin, which was partly open, and I saw him handing the packet and a letter to Dantes. He did not mention it, said the owner, but if he has such a letter, he will give it to me. Danglars thought for a moment. In that case, Monsieur Morel, he said, I beg you to say nothing about it to Dantes. I must have been mistaken. At that moment, the young man came back and Danglars left them. Now, my dear Dantes, are you free? The owner asked. Yes, monsieur. It did not take long. No, I gave the customs a list of our cargo. As for the port authorities, they sent a man with the coastal pilot, and I handed our papers over to him. So you have nothing more to do here. Dantes cast a rapid glance about him. No, everything is in order, he said. Then you can come and take dinner with us. Please, Monsieur Morel, I beg you to excuse me, but the first thing I must do is to visit my father. Nonetheless, I am most grateful for the honour you do me. Yeah, it's just like we've gone through like this much re-rolled ports, and nothing new. That's proper, Dantes. Very proper. I know that you are a good son. And, Dantes asked, somewhat hesitantly, as far as you know, he's in good health, my father? I do believe so, my dear Edmond, though I have not seen him. Yes, he stays shut up in his little room. It's an event, CE. Because that's the second time I've seen it. Ever. Yes, he stays shut up in his little room. Which at least proves that he had lacked nothing while you were away, Dantes smiled. My father is a proud man, monsieur. And even if he were short of anything, I doubt if he would have asked help from anyone in the world except God. Now, when you've done that, we can count on your company. I must beg you once more to excuse me, Monsieur Morel, but after that first visit, there is another that is no less important to me. Ah, Dantes, that's true. I was forgetting that there is someone in Les Catalans who must be expecting you with no less impatience than your father, the lovely Mercedes. Dantes smiled. Aha, said the owner. Now I understand why she came 3 times to ask me for news of the Pharaon. Dash it, Edmond. You're a lucky fellow to have such a pretty mistress. She is not my mistress, monsieur, the young sailor said gravely. He is my fiancé. Sometimes amounts to the same thing, the owner said with a chuckle. Not for us, monsieur, Dantes replied. Oh, so the grand boyfriend already has a girlfriend. Dang. Okay. Come on, my dear Edmond, the other continued. Don't let me detain you. See, Polly gets everywhere. You've looked after my business well enough for me to give you every opportunity to look after your own. Do you need any money? No, monsieur. I have all my salary from the trip, that is, nearly 3 months' pay. You manage your affairs well, my boy. You might add that my father is a poor man, Monsieur Morel. Yes, indeed. I know you are a good son to him. So go and see your father. I too have a son, and I should bear a grudge against the man who kept him away from me after a 3-month voyage. Ooh, another necromancy, that's always nice. Is that a rainbow? No. May I take my leave then? The young man said with a bow. Yes, if you have nothing more to say to me. No. When Captain Leclerc was dying, he did not give you a letter for me. It would have been impossible for him to write one, monsieur. But that reminds me, I wanted to ask you for a fortnight's leave. Vampires, the original necromancers. Oh, Gold Avenger! Yes! Literature catalyst! Go! See, I start reading about his girlfriend, and he arrives. I've got my big hat. I've got my dad joke card summoned for the win, yeah. Got dad jokes, nice wine, classic literature, big sexy hat. Yeah, exactly. I'm actually gonna probably... I did say to Jim that I'm gonna upload this VOD if, like, I actually summon him. I did. I love it. Sorry, I'm like holding my wine glass up at the screen. Great. I'm gonna finish reading this page, and then I'm gonna play some game. Okay, so it would have been impossible for him to go. It would have been impossible for him to write one, monsieur. But that reminds me, I wanted to ask you for a fortnight's leave. To get married? Firstly, then to go to Paris. Very well. Have as much time as you want, Dantés. It will take us a good 6 weeks to unload the vessel, and we shall hardly be ready to put to sea again within 3 months. In 3 months' time, however, you must be there. The Pharaon, the ship owner continued, putting a hand across the young sailor's shoulders, cannot set sail without its captain. Without its captain? Dantés cried, his eyes lighting up with joy. Be very careful what you are saying, monsieur, because you have just touched on the most secret of my heart's desires. Can it be that you intend to appoint me the captain of the Pharaon? If it was up to me alone, I should grasp your hand, my dear Dantés, and say to you, the matter is settled. But I have a partner. And you know the Italian proverb, Scira compagno, a padrone? At least we are halfway there. So at least we're halfway there, since you already have one of the 2 votes you need. Leave it to me to get you the other, and I shall do my best. Oh, Monsieur Morel, the young sailor cried, with tears in his eyes, grasping the ship owner's hands. Monsieur Morel, I thank you on behalf of my father and of the Mercedes. Fine, Edmond, fine. There is a God in heaven who looks after honest folk. Go and see your father. Go and see Mercedes. Then when that's done, come and see me. But don't you want me to accompany you back to land? No, thank you. I shall stay here to settle my accounts with Danglars. Were you happy with him during the voyage? It depends on what you understand by that question, monsieur. If you mean as a good companion, no, because I think that he has not liked me since the day when I had the folly, after a trifling dispute between us, to suggest that we should stop for 10 minutes on the Isle of Monte Cristo to settle the matter. It was wrong of me to propose that, and he was right to refuse. If you're asking me about him as a supercargo, I think there is nothing to say, and that you will be satisfied with the manner in which his duties have been carried out. That is the end of page 14 and the start of page 15 of the Count of Monte Cristo, the Penguin Classics edition. As translated by Robin Buss. I will probably continue reading that in my spare time, but I will go back to the game now.